Hello, everybody, and welcome live from Dedham, Massachusetts. It's Virtual Fridays Dire Literary Series, and live from Los Angeles, California, we have our feature, Mr. David Rocklin, and I want to tell you a little bit about David right here and right now. This is I always encourage you to go to people's websites, and that is davidrocklin.com. It's Rocklin, Lin, and that's his most recent novel from 2017. And we need to go to about David so I can do this. There he is.
Oh, me.
There he is. I mean, it's so easy for people just to read it. I should just be like, read it. I mean, we're in 2023 now on Zoom, so it'd be like, read it. But I'm the host, and David was such a gracious host to me last Sunday. So David Rocklin is the author of The Luminist and the founder, curator of the Rorschach, a monthly reading series in Los Angeles. He was born and raised in Chicago and now lives in Los Angeles with his wife, daughters, and a 150-pound Great Dane that's eating him out of house and home. He needs to stay in his own damn bed. He's currently at work on his next novel, The Electric Love Songs of Fleischl Berger. So I'm going to turn this on over to Mr. David Rocklin.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the introduction. That website is desperately in need of update. I can tell you that third novel is finished and is just beginning its journey out into the world on rounds. So we will see what we will see. um, what's this? There's a question here. Let's see here. What's the chat?
I'll moderate the questions, David. You don't have to worry about
Okay,
reading.
no worries.
Do
No
your
worries.
do your thing, and
I
I'll
will
take
do
care of
my
everything else.
thing. So I think so. I've got what about like seven or so minutes. I think something like that. So I will read just from the very beginning of the last published novel, which is The Night Language. And if there's time, I might read like the opening paragraph of the brand new one just to say that I did it. So this is The Night Language, which is based very loosely on a true story involving a young man who was the son of the Emperor of Abyssinia, who was taken by the British Army. This is going back into, say, the mid 1800s, and brought to England, where he became a ward of Queen Victoria's court. As fictionalized, the novel became a love story, and this is how it starts. 17 December 1900, Villefranche, France. At last some daylight. The sun broke through in the afternoon following 2 days of thick black clouds and downpours that had him spending his holiday running from doorway to cafe canopy. Now, finally, he could paint. He unpacked his canvas and set up his easel on the path that ran along the blue ribbon of sea between Nice and Monaco. Mixing his oils, he gazed at the vista before him, acquainting himself with the particular shades of sunlight and the way they teased both color and shape from the land. Already he'd painted a good deal of the distant village, and in just 2 days' time. A wonderful 2 days, he thought, in which he got thoroughly lost in his composition, while occasionally humming a forgotten adagio. He worked without interruption, oblivious to everything around him, thinking of nothing, only colors, tones, rims, and borders. Fellow visitors may have passed him by as he worked, or not. Villefranche clustered under the soft gold dust of the sun's rays, breaking through the last cloud cover left by the passing storm. It was built up against a striated wall of rust-colored rock some 600 feet high. Above the tile roofs of the homes and the cathedral, wispy tendrils lifted from the cooking fires of restaurants and cafes. Gulls soared down from the ledge in a tight arrow, passing the zigzagging switchback trails carved into the cliff face. In the light, they resembled falling bodies clad in white. Their shadows bent across the cliffs as they abruptly pulled out of their dives just before hitting the foaming waves. They flew close, their outstretched wings ruffling the surface of the sea. The wind they rode was cold and strong. He weighted his easel with smooth stones, then daubed at the cliff paths with a mix of sienna and bay to catch the smoothing effect of the last day's rains. As he worked, enjoying the pleasant briskness of the air and the faint sounds of townspeople emerging from their homes, he took notice of a sleek canoe drifting in on the tide toward the natural stone jetty that stood as the town's lone port. Such an unremarkable thing, visitors on an outing to the Mediterranean town. The area had gained a reputation for its agreeable weather, its flourishing casinos and fine hotels. The fact that the boat he spied was filled stem to stern with finely dressed ladies in broad seaside hats and immaculate dresses of milk and wheat shouldn't have held his attention for more than a moment, and yet he couldn't reclaim the sense of disappearing into his work that he craved, not while the ornate canoe drifted toward land. Muttering curses at his own inability to concentrate, he watched the ladies gather around a figure on the canoe, a woman dressed entirely in black. It seemed that they were trying to shield her. The chill, he thought, or the prying eye of others, perhaps she was someone of note. He'd come from Paris for the same reason he always did. The city would grow too hot, too cold, or too close, and he'd find that he needed to step away from his days living and working in the Marais to be alone at the water's edge, staring at the low, leaden horizon line. There had been far too many tourists on his last few visits, and he'd begun considering other destinations he could escape to before deciding to give this spot one last chance. In any event, it was best to catch the light before him while it lasted. If he just set to working again, he felt confident that he'd make progress. The painted cliff paths looked good, so he turned his attention to the cove at the base of the village, an excuse to watch the canoe, its oars lifted in surrender to the pull of the tide. A local piloted it, he could tell. They knew how fruitless it was to row once they got close to the jetty. I'll watch just a bit longer, he decided. Maybe this is a new painting presenting itself to me. The black-clad figure struggled to her feet. She was immediately surrounded by the finely dressed women. A rich invalid, no doubt. He selected a thin horsehair brush and daubed a bit of gray on Villefranche itself, on its narrow sidewalks that a grown man could span wall to wall with outstretched arms, its descending stairways down to the sea path and the first shades of aqua. The woman in black got out of the canoe, followed closely by the others. Her baggy, overly billowing clothing was in fact a formal dress. It was dark and jeweled with some sort of stone that ignited.
All right, I guess we're having technical difficulty. David, we've lost you, but your square is still there. It's the first time something like that has ever happened.
Do you want me to sing while we're waiting?
Oh, well, I mean, we are going live, so how about a little song to get us through? We'll do backups.
Yeah. Let me get
David might not even know that he's not, he's no longer live. It was an issue there. So let me figure out what I can do about this. David, are you there? I can do that for a while. David, are you there? I'm texting him now. This is live television.
See if there's.
Oh, there you are.
I'm
Okay.
here. Am I good? Am I okay?
You're okay. I can't for the life of me figure out what part you left off on. But
Oh dear. Okay.
would you like to continue reading, or do you just want to answer some questions? We killed some time deftly.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Everything was completely connected over here.
It made this funny noise like, bzz, and then Apollo 11 crashed.
Wow. I had no idea my words contained such power, but thank you. No, I can take some questions, and then I can read I can read the very beginning of the brand new one.
That sounds great.
Sorry to have wasted everyone's time if no one heard it.
No, we heard actually a good 5 minutes of you were reading through Night Language. So tell me a little bit about that book, Night Language, before we talk about the new one. You got blurbs from Lydia Yakovlevich and Caroline Levitt. How did you secure such prominent writers to blurb your book?
Well, Carolyn Levitt and Gerard Conley, who's the gentleman who wrote Boy Erased, which was his memoir that was made into a film. They were secured through the agency I was with at the time. Lydia Yuknevich, I actually know, and she has been extraordinarily kind to me from the very beginning of my writing journey, because we were with the same publisher for our first novels, or actually her memoir. Her first published piece was a memoir called The Chronology of Water, and my first novel, The Luminist, was published by the same outfit. And so we met in that process, and she continues to be literally one of the most gracious, lovely, giving people, as well as an incredibly important figure in the lit community. I mean, she's just extraordinary. Caroline, I don't know personally, but she was kind enough to blurb it, as was Gerard and a few other folks.
Yeah, Caroline was a guest here a while back, and she's just
Mm,
wonderful, really kind
she
and
is.
giving.
Yeah, that's
So,
what I've heard. I've never met her.
so you were saying that this book was inspired by true events, and did I
Mhm.
hear correctly that the love story part of it was not the true event, or?
That's correct. Yeah, the love story part of it actually did not exist until about four drafts in. And what happened was, at the first novel that I wrote, The Luminist, was about the very beginnings of photography in the Victorian era. And it was based extremely loosely on the life of a woman named Julia Margaret Cameron, who was one of the early age photographers. She was a transgressive artist, and as part of my research for that, I was lucky enough to go through the Getty Museum's archives, where they have most, if not all, of the existing photographs that she ever did. One of them depicted this child, this young black child, who was dressed in what a colonial white eye would have considered African garb at that time. And his image was so stunning, and I just didn't know what to do with it, but I couldn't get out of my head. So after The Luminist, found a home, and the pub date was coming, and I was starting to get the inevitable question of what's next. I began to think about that boy, and discovered who he was. He was the son of the Emperor of Abyssinia, who was taken after Britain invaded, and brought to Queen Victoria's court, where he became a ward of the court, and in life passed away early. He passed away around 1617. I wanted to excavate his life, and I also, weirdly, from just the fictional side of my head, which is obviously where I write from, I wanted to give him a chance to live the life that he never got in his real life. And so the book became something quite different from his actual life. In the book, the character is older, starts off in his late teens and moves from there. And the other character, who became his love interest in later drafts, started out almost as a father figure, but and did not exist in the earliest drafts. In, say, the third or fourth draft, he was a fellow black passenger aboard the ship that brought the main character back from Abyssinia to England. And they just simply, in one scene, saw each other and realized they were the only ones on board the ship who looked like that. They were the only black passengers, and he was more of a prisoner than a passenger. The other character was the apprentice to the surgeon who was aboard the one of the military ships. And from that draft to the next couple, it turned into a love story. I did not plan that. They literally kind of found each other on the page. And it was really just a remarkable thing to just step back and let it happen.
And that came from your head. It wasn't
Yeah.
like a content editor or like a critique that said,
Nope. That was,
put a love story in there. Did the whole Hollywood thing.
no, that was me. That was me. Yeah.
Fantastic. And now, tell me a little bit. You're from Chicago. How long have you lived
Yeah.
in Los Angeles for?
I moved to LA in the mid 90s.
And how long have you been doing the Rorschach series?
We're in our 10th year right now.
So what struck you to do this? Did you see other successful series, or was this big void?
Yeah, it was the void that made me do it. Basically, when the first novel came out, and I was very fortunate, I got to do the book tour. I got to read at different festivals and different events, solo and with other writers. And because I didn't come up in an MFA program, I didn't come up in various workshops, that was the first time I really spent a lot of time in the company of other writers, and I loved it. I mean, obviously, all of us here who write, we know what it's like when we're talking to friends or loved ones who don't about the experience of working through something one day, and they're sympathetic because they care about us, but they're like, yeah, okay, that's cool, must have been hard. And then you go tell a writer the same thing, and you can see it, they get it. It's unspoken, the level at which they get it. And I really miss the company of writers and being inspired by other writers. So after the book tour ended and I came back, basically thinking, okay, I'm not going to see other writers for a long time because writing is by nature solitary. That sucks. What am I going to do? And I reached out to a couple of folks who I was lucky enough to have met, one of whom actually is Cheryl Strayed, who is very good friends with Lydia. And I kind of told her, that I was sort of missing the company of writers. And she said, why don't you start a reading series and just invite writers? It's a great way to meet them. And I thought, okay. So that's literally how it started. And we've been doing this little dog and pony show for 10 years now.
So yeah, that's how we met. But have you,
Mhm.
Cheryl or Lydia, ever read at your series?
They've not been in LA at the time that there's a series. Lydia knows that she has an absolute standing invitation anytime she's around. It just hasn't come together.
Yes. So I mean, it's exhausting to do a monthly series, especially for 10 years. Have you ever considered like, this is it, I'm done here? Have those thoughts crossed your mind?
No, not really, because I get as much joy out of it as I hope folks who come to the series do. Just the chance to discover writers who I've never met, voices I've never heard, work that I might not otherwise encounter. To me, that's the stuff, right? That's the ability to, the ability to put our words down, I think, is how we define ourselves a lot when we think about ourselves as writers. And we kind of forget that there is, and we think of that part of our writing life as involuntary, right? Like we have no choice, we have to write, but we don't have to put our words out. That's much more of a decision that we make, to put our words out in a public way, whether it's through a traditional publisher or a collection or self-published, whatever it might be. And so for me, the opportunity to create a space where writers can kind of present themselves and they know that the people who are receiving their words are glad to be there. That's the experience that I had when I was, when I go out and read, and I want other writers to know that feeling. Even if it's on the relatively small scale of a reading series, it's the thing that can keep you going when you sit there alone with your writing and wonder if it's worth it. And so I always wanted to be there. There could come a day where I'm just like, okay, I'm exhausted and I'm doing each show for one person. And maybe then I might think about it. But I don't know if I would ever stop it. I might hand it off to somebody else, but I have no present inclination about that. To me, it's like, as long as people are having fun and they want to show up, let it roll.
Has From John Wessick, has San Francisco poet Rorschach ever read at Rorschach?
No, I'm not familiar with Rorschach, but if you are and you want to put him in touch with me, reach out to Tim. I'd love to have him if he's ever going to be in LA.
Talk about double promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Your series also has audience prompts, and then you have
Yep,
like a literary death match types of thing. There,
I
two
do.
writers have 5 minutes to write, and then the audience votes, and whoever comes back gets to feature the next month. How did that
Yeah,
start?
yeah. Yeah, I don't know if Corey or Dar are on here, but they went head to head, and that was super fun at our last show. Um, it started just because whenever writers hear the word prompt, they always think, oh, great, I'm in workshop. And it's a grind and it's maybe not fun. And so it was really just kind of a way to have fun with it. And it really did start out just being kind of a fun communal thing. And then basically because I came up doing combat sports, and there's a part of my head that is always competing, at least with myself at this point, I thought, well, you know what? Why not put them head to head? What's the worst that happens? And as I comment usually during the show, for all of us who know what it's like to kind of labor over one sentence for 8 months, wondering if it sounds perfect, and then eventually you just jettison it because you found a better one and go through the same thing. The idea of creating something that's just raw, spontaneous, and on the spot, and then come up and read it, I think there's a lot to be gained in our writing life from doing that. And it's fun, and it's fun. It's a chance to elbow strikers are 100% allowed.
Nice.
If you know the series of Krav elbows, I want you in our show.
I'd like to give you a chance since you got cut off, and that wasn't my
Yeah,
fault,
yeah,
folks. I
yeah.
had nothing to do with that.
I
To,
blame you
to,
anyway.
to read from your book that's about to be out, The
Sure.
Electric Love
Yeah, yeah.
Song of Fleischl Berger. Maybe say a little bit. You've got like 5 minutes, so say a little
Okay.
something about it and read.
Yeah. I'm gonna read the opening two paragraphs just to kind of like say this is how it starts. So, The Electric Love Song of Fleischl Berger is a novel that arose from like just everyone else of mine does. It arose from me researching something wholly unrelated and going down a deep rabbit hole and going, oh, that's kind of cool. And in this case, I was looking at present day near death experiences, just because, not really because I thought about writing about them. It's just more that it's a fascinating topic. The idea that people are floating above themselves in operating rooms and later on wake up and tell the doctors, here's everything you did. It's cool and it's kind of unexplainable. And so I was doing some research on that, and there was a footnote dropped into an article. And the footnote basically said, the gentleman who is popularly credited with inventing the electroencephalogram did so because he had his own near-death experience. And I thought, well, that's weird. And I went down that rabbit hole and discovered that he was a German gentleman who at the turn of the 20th century had an experience where he almost was killed, and about 100 miles away, his sister heard it and knew that something had happened at that precise moment. And I just became so fascinated by the idea of this moment that he was experiencing being heard from 100 miles away, and how it drove him through the rest of his life to try to figure out what was this thing. So basically, it was his white whale. It's not that he ever proved it, obviously not, but it drove his life. And that really became the jumping off point for a story about a young German Jewish man at the turn of the 20th century who has something happen, and it's heard by the love of his life, and it defines her life, his life, and the life around them in Germany through the silent film era, through both world wars, up to the moment where, as the book says, he can no longer be an ordinary man. He has to be someone who's impossible. And so that is the story behind The Electric Love Song of Fleischl Berger. And this is just the opening two paragraphs very quickly. And I really appreciate you guys having me and this time. The first time Fleischl Berger almost died was at the moment of his birth, on the 21st day of May, 1878. He was waiting there in the wet, as babies do, while his prawn limbs drifted aimlessly against the oddity sharing the dark with him. Then came a blast of light, buzzings like wasps, a startling drop, and an icy immersion, and he only had time for a breath and a beat of his untried heart before everything stilled. There was a great fanning flare of blue above him, and a shape within it moving as he was supposed to move, and he couldn't reach it. He didn't know this wasn't the normal way. He didn't know that electricity, still unfamiliar to the residents of a seaside German village called Stralsund, wasn't supposed to course through the shallows of the Baltic to fill his drowning heart. He didn't know anything at all except breathe, which he couldn't, and get out, which he couldn't. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for being here. And your new book
Yeah.
sounds fascinating. When will that be available, folks?
God only knows. So basically, during the pendency of the pandemic and the writing of this book, I made the unexpectedly emotional decision to leave my agency. And so at this point, the book is now sitting on the desks in sort of a preliminary way of a couple of agents one of whom has expressed some interest, I think. I don't know. It's very hard to tell with them. And already through their reader gave really some of the most depthful editorial feedback that I think I've ever gotten from anyone, publisher, agent, period. And so I have some hope now that the revision is sitting with her that they might be interested. Otherwise, we'll see we'll see what happens. You know, if any of y'all are agents, you know, here I am. But at this point, it's really just the beginning of the process of hopefully it finding a home. We will find out.
Well, best of luck with that. And
Thank you.
here's the
Thank
book
you.
that David read from the first part before
Mhm.
the power went out.
Before Tim did something, before Tim did it.
usually I admit guilt to that, but I'm clean this time.
I feel your cleanliness. I do.
All right. Thank you so much, David. And
Thank you.
if anyone that's watching on the live stream on Facebook, use the link to come in if you want to participate in the open mic. The open mic is going to be coming right up, and after the open mic is well, not after that. Next week we'll have Kimberly Ann Priest, the poet, making her second appearance, and she'll be here next Friday night. David, thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it.